Welcome back to our third and final video of the basic InDesign tutorial. In this video we're going to look at adjusting our font and copy to match our hoped for output. Let's get started. The first thing we want to do is we want to be sure that our text boxes, this text box and this text box and this text box, are all centered left to right. We did this in the previous video with our graphic by selecting the box and coming over here and remembering that our left to right, or our X value on a 4-inch postcard halfway in the middle, is 2 inches flat. These are basically correct, but we're just going to adjust them so we've got things the way we want them. Here's the third one. Now keep in mind I'm selecting all of these using the regular selection tool, and this one looks like it is dead on 2 inches. So let's go back and select our text tool, and let's highlight some text and get to work on making this text look exactly like the postcard. The first thing we need to do is get to the font that we want to use. Now the font we're going to use today is a standard font that you'll find on most Windows computers, Britannic Bold. So you can see that I used the font drop-down menu and I scrolled to find Britannic Bold while I have my font highlighted, and if I select, it changes to that font. The second thing I want to do is change the point size, or the font size. That is this dialog box here, and this can be a bit of a guessing game, so I'm going to try 36 points and see where that gets me. That's too big, so let's dial it back to 24. That's not big enough. So if I want to have a custom font size, I can just come in here and highlight this and say, what if I wanted to try 28 points? Hit enter. Let's go right at 30 points. I think that's going to work for us. Next, I'm going to apply the same properties to the second line of text. I'm going to highlight. I use that using the type tool. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to select the 30-point font, hit enter. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to select my correct font, the Britannic Bold. That looks pretty good. Now if you'll notice, I'm just going to click off here. If you'll notice, in this text box, the type is not centered. So one of the things we need to do with the type tool selected is highlight our text and come over here and click on this button that's going to align our text in the center of our box. You can see it shifted it over there, it puts it right in the middle. Same thing with the bottom. Come up here and align center, and we're good. And just because I know we're going to need to do it, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do the same thing with this copy here, all the while highlighting things with the type tool. Okay. Now the only thing I think I want to do with this bottom text is adjust the size. I'm happy with the font. Let's bump the size up a bit. One of the things you can see that I did here, just to show, is I did come in here and I did put my cursor between the convention and the ampersand, and I hit the return key just so I could move that down to the next line the way the postcard was. So the first thing I see is the spacing here is a little wider than I want. The way InDesign takes care of that is not immediately recognizable, but I'll show you where it is. It's right here. They call it the leading value. And if you click down on the drop down, InDesign tries to take care of this automatically, but sometimes it doesn't give you what you want. So I want to tighten this up a little bit, and so I'm going to select, let's try 10 point. That tightens it up a little bit. Let's leave it there for now. And before I move on, I want to change the font. I know I said I wouldn't, but I want to change it from Calibri just to a straight Arial font. And the next thing I want to do is I want to get the font the size that I want it. But if we go back and look at our example, we can see that it looks like this first line and the date are a little bit bigger in terms of the font size than the line 2, line 4, and line 5. Let's go back and make that happen. So I'm going to click off, and I'm going to now, with the type tool again, I'm going to select just this first line, and I'm going to increase my point size to, I don't know, let's try 14. That looks pretty good. Let's do the same thing. Select with the type tool, come up and change the point size to 14 point. That's looking pretty good. Now I think what I want to do is I want to move a few of these pieces of text around so we can sort of get them where they want to be. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to select, I'm going to click right on the edge of that text box, and I'm going to click and drag down. I'm holding the mouse button down and click and kind of put this where I want it. That's about where I want it. And I think what I'll do is I'll also take the architecture text box, click that once, and then click and drag and move it straight up to maybe about here. Now one of the things I'm doing is I'm holding the shift key down also so I don't get any left to right movement, just top and bottom movement. If you hold the shift key down, it will help you to make sure you don't get any movement in the direction you don't intend. If you want to adjust in a smaller increment, you can always use the arrow key. So I'm going to just tap the arrow key down a little bit, a couple, maybe 3 times, just to put that where I want it. And in terms of this text box, click, and I'm going to click and hold and move. I'm going to hold the shift key down so I don't get any movement that I don't want. Let that go, and I'm going to just tap down a few times just like that, and I'm going to click off. Now this is kind of what I want, but for a couple small adjustments. On the postcard we can see that the little whatever this brainstem business here is over top of the word architecture. So this has to do with a property that InDesign calls a range. So if I select the brain art with my regular selection tool and I right click, I can see here there is a contextual menu that says arrange. I want to bring this to the front, in front of everything. So if I click bring to front, you can see that now that brainstem thing is in front of the T and the E of architecture, just like the example. The last thing I want to show you is how to change the color on some of this text. Now in our example, the text is all black except for the period is white. Let's get that changed. I'm going to select my type tool again, and I'm just going to come in here and just highlight the period. Now if you look, you'll see that the type tool also has a fill and a stroke. No stroke, but the fill, we're going to use this. This is just the paper color, which is fine. And so if we click on that, you can see it changed it down here. And if I click off of this, you can see it did change it to white. And if I select this again, whoops, using the type tool, there's a mistake by me. Using the type tool, you can see that up here it changed that fill color to white. But if I select the black letters, you can see that it changed it back to black. And if we want to double check and see how things went, I can come up here to the View, Screen Mode, Presentation, and I think you'll agree that that is pretty close to the same thing we had on our postcard. Hopefully this will get you guys started, and I hope you enjoyed listening to this series of videos.